Super excited to be sharing this interview with you today with Justin Carpenter. If you don't know who he is, he's creating a huge movement in the truth seeking and what's going on in the world. But more than that, he's also a vegan, or pretty much a high raw vegan, and is sharing the message of what foods do to the body, the consequences. But in today's video, we're going to talk mostly about why vegans and raw vegans go back to eating animals. And it's quite a sensitive subject because I feel I struggle and I get triggered by it at times. He really puts forward a more gentle, understanding approach, and I really enjoy his perspective and how he shares about how we are all one and how we are conscious souls. Great insight into his perspective and what he's been experiencing. It's very comforting to know that we're not alone on this journey, and that when we do get triggered, there's a deeper reason, there's a deeper underline of that. But we've got lots to share. I can't just share it all in this intro. So if you can't watch it all in one go, I highly recommend you watch it in chunks. I like to do 30 minutes, 20 minutes. It really is worth watching to get so many insights and nuggets and shifts, mind-blowing shifts. Justin is absolutely incredible. Check him out. I'll leave everything in the description box where you can find him and what he offers. Enjoy the video. If you like this video, do put a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, also turn on the bell notification for future videos and also to support the channel. Hi, Justin. Welcome.
Hey, Toni.
Thank you for coming on. It's an honor to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. I've been following you for a little bit of time now, and it's great to finally get connected and do something together. So appreciate it.
Finally, because at the beginning of the year, I was like, I need to connect with Justin. You're very active on social media and very supportive. I love your energy. You've got lots to share, a lot to share about the awakening and even, raw veganism. And I know you very much, that's the foundation. Raw food is just the start. That's the foundation of being. And I'd like to discuss about raw veganism with those that perhaps are on this path and then go back to eating animals, eating meat, dairy and eggs. But first, could you just share a little bit about yourself, how you got onto this path? Who is Justin?
Wow, that's quite a question. I'll keep it short. So I've always been a truth seeker. I've always been curious. I've always been inquisitive. I love asking questions. I love figuring things out. I don't always just take just because as an answer to why things are the way they are. So from a very early age, when I was 3 or 4 years old, my parents got so tired of answering me asking questions about Santa Claus that they threw that whole thing out, and they finally told me the truth. They couldn't have it anymore. So I've always been inquisitive that way. And it was probably, when I was 15 or so, I watched the documentary Loose Change, and that talked about the inconsistencies with the 9/11 story and how the official narrative didn't fit with what actually happened. And that just kind of led me into this path of continually questioning everything, realizing that at this point, knowing that we've been lied to about every single aspect of how we were trained, how we were raised. Organized society has pushed us into this convenient little space, you might call it the matrix, or this world of illusions where everything is upside down. So we have to go back and consciously flip them all right side back up. So that's what led me to kind of my path today, where I did the whole traditional route of success. What organized society taught was success. I went to college. I got a degree in engineering. I went into the corporate world. I did that for 6 or 7 years. Moved around a little bit within that time, but it just never felt right. There was always something that was just like, why am I doing this? Why am I spending so much time doing this kind of stuff? Just for what? Just to save up for retirement for when I'm old and dying? And why don't I live now? Because I would be constantly going out on the weekends, going hiking or going camping or going exploring. I love to travel, love to see beautiful places. But then I always felt so bound to this vacation time and this just like meager ounce nothings of no freedom. There was no freedom there. So I just always felt very less than doing that kind of space. So It was probably it was in 2019, and I was living in Seattle, and I was actually married at the time, and to a wonderful woman. And I say we got divorced, and I hate saying divorce because it was like an amicable split. Like we realized we got married too quickly, couldn't have picked a better woman to go through that whole process and come out on the other side. So I'm very grateful for that. But went through that process and was like, well, if I'm not doing this, because I was kind of staying with my corporate job for her. Um, so if we're not together anymore, why am I doing any of this? And so I broke completely out. I cut off, I quit my corporate job. I outfitted my grandparents' old SUV into like a living situation, and I did a whole year of van life 2020,
Wow.
right as the COVID nonsense
Wow.
was all starting up. And people are like, "Are you still going to do it? Are you still going to go out?" I'm like, "Yeah, heck yeah, I am. I'm not going to let this." I knew it was nonsense from the beginning. I didn't trust the media. I didn't trust any of them. So I knew it was nonsense from the get go, and so I wasn't going to let it stop me. But you could easily justify it and say, if y'all want to be scared in a city, I'm going to go out in the woods and go have a
Yeah.
great time. And so I went to some of the most beautiful places in the U.S. And I just traveled with the seasons. So I went to Florida in March, and as it started getting too hot, I kept going north. And as it got, and then I started heading out west as I got high enough, and made a whole loop around the whole country, just staying weeks on end in whatever beautiful spot I'd find. And man, it was epic. Like it was just absolutely incredible. Just me and my dog, a really good time to just find myself, and really good time to just connect with Mother Nature and ultimately connect with God. And that was just this incredible space to really do that, all while the whole world was falling apart, while everyone was freaking out. And I'm realizing, like, how do you guys not see this? How do you guys not see that this is just ridiculous? Like, okay, I get it. You don't know what it is, so we'll give it a couple weeks to figure this things out. But here we are months down the row, and we're still not doing anything about it. Now we're years down the road, and people are still wearing masks and
Yeah.
so I started to kind of branch out into speaking the truth, getting information out there, just saying this seems really obvious to me. Here, let me take these statistics of all these other diseases that are declining like no other before. They're basically disappeared, and COVID's on the rise, and it's a complete replacement. And so I'd send that to all my friends and whomever on Instagram. That's where I kind of started putting stuff out there, and just crickets, crickets, crickets. Nobody wanted to see it. Nobody wanted to say anything. People started distancing themselves from me, not wanting,
Yeah.
so it created that separation. But I didn't care, because I was like, if you guys are crazy enough to still believe this, and I was out doing my own thing anyway, so I wasn't really looking for anyone's approval. So it was just this perfect scenario of taking that leap of faith, stepping out, putting my neck out there to be bold and say these kinds of things. I had been looking into conspiracies and that kind of stuff for a while, but I had never spoken openly about them. So it was that year that really I found my voice, and I didn't really get much of a following until the end of 2020, when I ended up syncing up with Charlie Freak and doing shows with him. So he kind of helped get that initial surge of people, because I helped him as their channel got taken down, by YouTube. So as soon as their channel got axed, I was like, hey, if you guys need a channel or whatever, like, you're more than welcome to use mine. So they did, and we just had really good chemistry, really good. We did shows really well together. I was learning, but I learned very quickly, as I was learning, we were able to just do a whole lot more together, and it just felt very natural to me. And like speaking just began to feel really, really natural to me as we were talking about all this kind of stuff, and I loved it. I loved every bit of it. And so fast forward, I went down to Mexico to spend some time with them, came back to the US, and have been traveling around the US for this year, mostly going to different Trump rallies. So traveling around to all the different Trump rallies that have been going on, and really just spreading this message of hope to anyone who wants to hear it, that everything is okay. There's nothing to fear. Everything's under control. It seems bad. Yes, it seems bad because we were in hell, but we're coming out of it now, and we're coming out of it with the assistance of people who have our best good and have our best interests in mind. So that's kind of the space I'm at now, is just continuing to talk about this message, but tying it all in holistically. So I love health in every aspect, you know, spiritual, mental, emotional, and finding ways to really explore that and helping people to unlock themselves. Like that makes me shine like no other, when I can help somebody see some little weight, some little tether they've got within their journey, and say, hey, you realize you're holding on to that. Why don't you just let it go? And then they
Yeah.
do. And then they fly
Yeah.
and we fly together, and it just gets better and better that way. So that's where I'm at now, is just continuing to find my voice, continuing to experience and connect with people, and just loving every single second of it. So that's it in a nutshell. That's me.
Yeah, you're holding that space and it's comforting, especially when there's so many in fear and still in fear. And it's a great look at your, you do talk about the raw foods, but you're talking a lot of all what's happening. Although you're sharing a lot, the real truth, what's going on in the media is not sharing, and it can be scary. And people are like, "Oh my god, now it's what's this is a whole new this is a whole new thing." So, but then empowering them that it's meant to happen. There's reasons, there's gifts out of this, and let's look at how we can now see through the veil. And
Mhm.
it's empowering and giving more the power back rather than keeping people in that fear. And it's
Right.
not all doom and gloom. Um, I definitely want you to come back on the channel and talk more deeper about. But if you do want to check out Justin's uh, message, his truth seeking path, he's got a lot. He's got a Telegram. I'll put all that in the description box.
Awesome.
Uh, but so you're raw vegan. Are you frugivore pretty much?
Well, I'd say right now I've found some balance in like a raw till four kind of lifestyle, but any cooked elements I'll do. I stay with Dr. Sebi's kind of alkaline list. So it's really as simple things like chickpeas or quinoa. That's about as much as I'll do into the cooked food space. But I still will have, you know, one meal where it's more dense, and then everything else is raw. So right now I'm basically on lots of water, like 2 liters of orange juice, and then a dense meal in the late afternoon, evening time, and that's about my day. That's what my days look like from the past few weeks, and it's kind of gone in different spaces here and there. But I definitely feel best when I'm on that high raw or 100% raw. Even, you know, I know that that's the path to go towards. I'm just also honoring my body's transition through that space, and really honoring that transitional time period as well, because that was one thing I learned, is I jumped right into the raw food head first without, you know, no hesitation whatsoever. As soon as I found out, and as soon as it really clicked that this
Mhm.
was our species specific diet, that fruit was the highest of high as far as what we're supposed to be eating. And it doesn't matter how you break it down from a moral perspective or a physiological perspective, or any way that you want to look at it. This is it. Um, I wasn't so what, but what I did is I jumped right into a long juice fast, followed by a short water fast, and then I stayed 100% raw for the next 6 months. And while I did some tremendous detoxing, my body didn't quite catch up to that. So I lost a lot of weight, which a lot of people do experience, and I just didn't feel that strength and vitality right away. So I did reintroduce some cooked elements, and had a bout of kind of, you know, falling back into some junk food as well, which, you know, we do at times. But I definitely feel the difference between these two spaces, and I know that's where I need to get to. So it's just finding balance, and that's what I love to encourage with everybody, is we just need to be honest with ourselves, you know, not try and compare ourselves, because that's where I got stuck. Is I was like, okay, this is it, and here's some people who are thriving in this way of being. I want to be just like that,
Yeah.
but not honoring my process of really giving my body time to transition away from this entire lifetime, you know, 31 years or however long of eating toxic shit, you know. And so it takes time to rebuild, it takes time to break it all down and to move past it. um so that to me is what God was showing me, is like, you're on the right path, but remember, the transition is key. The transition is extremely important. So that's where I've kind of shifted my message, is just finding ways for people to find where they are on that journey, knowing that this is the right path, trusting that process, trusting that it is going to get you into that space. but not trying to skip any steps either. We need to really honor this whole process. So that's where I'm at kind of personally right now within that. But it's wonderful to really experience, because the clarity is like no other. And that's the best part about it from my perspective, is just the clarity when you're eating these high vibrational foods, these water rich life living foods. You feel that life, that vitality like no other, and the clarity that you can get. I mean, you know exactly as I do it, there's nothing better than it. So once you start to feel it, and that's the best part about it, is you don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to Toni. You don't have to listen to anybody about this. You just have to try it yourself, and you'll know. You'll know. And that's where true knowledge comes from. It's through direct experience. We don't have to look to any scientist, any doctor, anybody else
Yeah.
to tell us. It's right there in front of us, ready and waiting for you to try.
Yeah. And that's what I always encourage to just try it. Let's just see how you're going with it. Yeah, they might sometimes experience the detox, and we talk through that. I have, yeah, some of my connections always like, oh man, I can't do raw, not fully raw. And I said, I did the same for years. Raw till dinner was very successful. I felt very and great on it, but
Mhm.
I was slipping up into comfort. And there's deeper reasons behind that, but I felt the more raw days I was having, the more easier the depth of my traumas was. I was allowing them to surface and handle them just with more grace, and it was much more effortless. So yeah, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think we are in that instant gratification a lot, and
Right.
I moved away from that a long time ago, luckily. Not trying to rush the process. Sometimes you can get trapped in it, but just enjoying the process. I think you're already on this path. You're already, yeah, it's gonna, you will always, I never believe you ever go backwards. You're always learning and growing. And it's just part of it, it's mastering more, enjoying the journey rather than getting there. Just enjoy
Yes.
this unraveling. And I'm grateful for the moments when I had, or even at times if I have some cooked food, I'm like, why? But it reinforces I don't feel so good. But we've
Mhm.
still got some patterns and traumas, but they're not me. They're not who I really am. It's just
Right.
something that we'll work through.
Yeah, and just honoring those experiences too, because if I feel the urge to have something, then I shouldn't fight. I shouldn't, like, obviously be responsible with knowing where those urges are coming from, knowing that we're full of parasites and things that
Mhm.
will lead us into these kinds of spaces. But at the same time, if I need to have that experience with some cooked food, then have that experience with that cooked food, but also really sit with it too and feel what you feel afterward.
Yeah,
Don't just go through the sensations on how it tastes, and that part.
mindlessly.
That part's fine. That part's going to be enjoyable. Enjoy every moment of the tasting, but then also feel every moment of what happens afterward. Feel every moment of how you feel the next day, and really become sensitive to that. And then just like that, you start to notice, oh, when I eat this, I don't feel as good. So I can either, then you can move about consciously, responsibly, saying, okay, I know what that's going to be like if I eat that. I can still choose to do that, but at least I know the consequences. I'm not going at it blindly. I'm not going at it ignorantly. It's all very conscious. And so that's really the space, moving out of a slave-based mindset, is we have to become more conscious with every decision. We can't just do things robotically just because that's how our parents did it, or just because that's how society does it, or that's what we've been told. That's the slavery. That's that repetition. That's the matrix. And to break out of that is to break into sovereignty, to break into responsibility, and taking ownership for every action that I do, not just what I've been told.
That's so empowering. Yeah, very liberating to have that. Yeah, when you've got that it's mindful living, it's being conscious, it's really appreciating that we have these foods. I think the more you look into growing your own and seeing how foods are grown, you start to appreciate more of the food, and yeah, and the more you eat of the raw living foods, the more connection you have. So you do tend to slow down and be more present with your food and realize what emotions are coming up, what patterns, what are these triggering, why am I doing it, and questioning it. And there's a lot of growth in that. It's yeah, appreciating even when you do have moments of I'm just gonna eat whatever I want. But if you're eating mindfully, consciously, I think that's where the shifts really do happen and you break free. And it's liberating, it's freedom. That's true freedom. And that's what you're about. And that's why I love your work. And I'm delving down, binge watching a lot of your videos, especially on the health. I really am fascinated, but even more on the whole awakening process.
Yeah.
It's because I questioned it for a long time. I couldn't articulate and it's only really the raw foods that have really started to help me understand and much deeper and articulate it better for some reason.
Mm.
There's big shifts happening with more on the raw foods. It's these raw living foods, they've got so much power. That's why I realize when I eat cooked, I know I'm going back. It's necessary, and I'm loving myself through that. And this is what I'm teaching others: like even love yourself through it. If we can love is the answer. Love is helps just diffuse, dilute so much of the unnecessary suffering, and then we really can start seeing, digging and deep for the truth, and then that it all comes together. And on that, then Justin, with the raw foods, it seems that we all know and we share and we feel it and we get past the detox at times. And even some are on the path of sharing the message of raw foods. And then you hear about some in, those that go back to eating, especially even the ones that are super passionate. They see the benefits. What do you think happens? What is that? For me, I really at times, and I always try to come from understanding, but I do struggle at times to, especially the ones that are very, focused on the ethical side. But what I do see is there's the more of the patterns, those that are on the health stance do go back to eating animals, meat, dairy, and eggs. So what do you feel's happening? What's your take on understanding?
Well, I think I think it really comes down to the holistic approach versus the compartmentalized approach. So if all you want out of health is just an attractive body, and it's just about the physicality, and it's just about that aspect, then the rest of it's not going to be as important, and you're not going to learn about the rest of it. And when we're only stuck in the physicality, when we're only stuck in that one mindset, we can start to look for other ways to find shortcuts to get to that. We can sort of disregard other means that might be right there in front of us. So it creates this unhealthy pattern of always looking for something else to meet that space, to find that sense of, because it really is. Once you start to look at it holistically, and you start to say, okay, why do I want to be healthy? Why do I want to feel good? Is it just to have an attractive body, or is it because I want this is my vessel to be able to do everything. This is what helps me create within this space. This is what allows me to be connected with everything around. And why am I here? What am I here to do? Even, what am I supposed to be doing with all this? And it's to be unlocking myself fully, to be walking in alignment with that which is truth in the best way that I possibly can. And if I'm looking for things out there to justify that, if I'm looking for some external solution and I'm not addressing what's going on in here, I'm not looking at it holistically. If I'm just looking at it from a compartmentalized approach, then that's always going to be able to be steered. That's always, whether by myself, my ego, or by somebody else. There's always going to be some way that can be steered, because I'm not viewing it holistically. Just like the scientists, they have their specific little box that's where they study, and they might know some things within that box, but they have no idea what that next box is about. And so if somebody comes along and tries to tell them, well, hey, this doesn't work in this particular scenario, they're like, well, I don't know that. That's not my field of expertise. That's not where I'm supposed to be looking at. I'm not supposed to look, And so then there's none of that congruency between all the parts. But the fortunate thing about the truth is it aligns everything. There's that syncretic thread that weaves everything together. So if that's truly your holistic view is you're viewing it as one entity, not as a separate parts where I'm just doing this and that, and they're all separately, but bringing it all together, then it starts to, there's a much higher purpose, there's a much higher meaning, there's a much higher reasoning behind doing things. And it's not just about the physicality, it's not just about me and my separate sense of self, it's about the holistic, the totality, because ultimately there is no separation, there's no separation between me and you, there's no separation between me and this space around me. This is all just us experiencing ourselves from different vantage points, but we're all one. And if I don't really get that, if I don't really see that, then I can start to justify doing things outside of the natural order, outside of natural law, if I don't even really understand who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. I just recently watched, I don't know if you've spoken with or have followed Eli Martyr with the Free Melon Society. He's fantastic.
I love
But
him. I
his
had him on my channel. Yeah, brilliant.
yeah, yeah, he's brilliant. But his series on, I just rewatched them. I'd watched them a while ago, but I just rewatched them of the health secrets you should know now or something like that. It's a 3-part series.
Yeah.
And he just breaks down, how like it doesn't matter which way you look at our physiology, it doesn't matter which way you look at how we are. We're designed to eat this species specific diet. And if we're not doing it, then we're ignoring natural law, and we can pretend to, but that just means we invite suffering.
Yeah.
And so I guess the question, why do people deviate away from that, and why do people fall back? Right? It's really that if you're coming from that space of I am separate and I have to figure this out based on the out there, then I'm always going to be looking for something out there to try and fix what I have to fix in here, instead of starting with this space, addressing what I need to address first, and then everything else will fall into place. So like, just like you mentioned, the raw food is what kind of brought you into everything else. It's what kind of opened the pathway to this. And so that's how the truth works. Once we're truly committed to the truth, then everything fits together, and when we don't deviate away from it. But if we're not really committed to the truth, if we're just committed to this kind of like selfish desire, then we'll justify anything to get into that space. And that's where I see a lot of people kind of falling back into that, is this idea that I have to um uh, I don't know, to kind of like take something from something else, like if I have to, um it's almost like a form of um, like eating meat. Let's just be very blunt about it. Let's just be very, very, very blunt about what this practice is. It's a satanic ritual. It's a ritual harvesting of another life, a life that is unwilling to be given. There's no animal out there that willingly gives its own life to be killed. So there has to be a sense of taking. There has to be some force applied in order to take that. The only way and the way that this natural creation is built is it protects free will of all sentient beings. It protects free will absolutely. And if that's not protected, then karma comes into play. Karma will come into play at some point or another. um, so unfortunately, with those kind of practices, you're bypassing that karmic repercussion in that moment, but you're delaying it to a later point. So that's all dark magic really is. It's paying a price. You always have to pay a price. You might gain a benefit for a short term. You might gain some power for a short term, but there's always a price to pay. So unfortunately, people who go back to that, they're unwilling to look at the holistic view. They're unwilling to look at the totality of what this process is about, and the importance of the spiritual and the emotional and the mental aspects as well. And they just want to stay on the physicality, and they want to stay isolated in that. And it is a shortcut for some, a shortcut to find, that strength, or that perceived sense of vitality for the short term. But there's always a price to pay, and it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before those consequences catch up. But there's no judgment in it, because the natural order is always all set up for that. So if we want to defy natural law, defy what we were made to eat, we can, but we will experience the consequences of that as well. So Yeah, so
Mm.
that's kind of my take on that one.
So, do you think they override? So those that are, they believe in the karma, they believe in that karmatic cycle. And when they do the opposite and do that, what's happened? Is that because they've got so involved with themselves, the ego, they've got the defaults, these patterns, and we get triggered. And when things become too much at times, I'm just simplifying it. Um, do you think that's what happens? Even because that, I see they're so passionate and share about the camp. They understand, you feel they understand it, but then do the total opposite. What's happening there? What's
W- Well, it's important to remember that everyone's always doing their best.
mm,
Always, 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 always. So, and if anyone's, biblical, Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." So people who commit and do anything, they don't do it with the sense of knowing. If anyone's harming another, there's not knowledge there, there's not wisdom that's there, to because if there was true wisdom, then those karmic laws would be known, because they're not, it's not subjective. It's not something that is like, I'm just making up, or I just want it to be that way. It's like, you can prove that these laws are very foundational and they're there, and if we defy them, we do suffer. So nobody would do that unless they didn't know. So it's just helpful to remember that, to kind of have that compassion, because that's the only space that anyone would deviate away from that base understanding of how this creation works, is if they didn't really know. So people can say lots of things,
mm,
but if they actually knew, there's no way that that would actually happen. Sometimes people just get caught up in saying things because others have, or maybe they believed it at one time, but they didn't really know it. And that's a good distinguishment between belief and knowing. Belief, you
you're
just
true.
break down the word belief, be lie. We don't need to be believing anything. We don't need to be lie anything. We need to be knowing things. And how do you know things? Well, a lot of times it's through direct experience. So it's not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that path of finding that direct knowledge through experience, but it's just something that if you don't want to go through as much of an arduous journey, then we do learn from others' experiences, so that we don't have to necessarily go through it ourselves. But it's at that we have that free will choice to do that. We have that free will choice to go about it however we want to, and that's our choice to do so.
Yeah, it's just like when they have that sort of conviction that is it has they explain that there's repercussions when they go back. I think that's what I struggled with the most with those that had already been. I have more compassion and understanding for those that don't even that they don't really understand about veganism. I have more love, but I seem to be short fused on the ones that had already. I struggle. I'll fully admit, and that's why I wanted to delve deeper and talk more. And I'm attracting more questions about this. More of my clients are asking, why is it then, if they have this such conviction, that going back is, and even for myself, like I would never. I more than yeah, my selfish reasons. I think I was thinking, do they truly believe that it's healthy? It's their health is not going to be compromised, even though they've shared the destruction of, what these animals. There's your karma there. The karma's happening in the body. So it's
Well, just just on that, I mean, I'd invite you to kind of look at the those feelings of being bothered by that too, because that's something that we can let go of. I mean, obviously you know that, but it's a practice. It's this realization of like, people will do as they will. I don't have to worry about any of that, because the structure of this creation is built as it is, and it has this natural rebalancing effect that occurs without us doing any effort whatsoever. So if I spend my time worrying about that rebalancing occurring, then I'm experiencing some imbalance myself. So just trust that it's going to get there to that point.
yeah.
But yes, I can understand the difficulty in knowing how to address that question, or knowing how to speak on that particular topic. Because it's one that a lot of people seem to, this past year, a lot of, I've known several people who have gone back into that space, and no judgment. Everyone's on their own journey, and people will figure it out however they want to. But as far as the reasonings behind why people make that kind of shift, I mean, you do have to kind of look at the patterns, the cyclical patterns of seasons as well. So at different seasonal points, there are different uh, urges that we can have. As we enter the colder, wintry months, and those of us who are from colder climates, we're conditioned into this space to where that means scarcity. The cold means scarcity, and so when I'm in that scarcity mindset, I'm going to be looking for scarcity-based foods. And if we get really honest with what foods are, the meats and the animal products and the starches and those kind of things, those are the scarcity based foods. That's the stuff that you eat only when there's nothing else to go around. It's not the stuff that we'd go for if we had abundance growing all around us. We would go for the easiest, most natural things we had. But since most of our lives and generation, and this has been generations that we've been bombarded by this parasitical control structure that's wanted to keep us in this slave state, um, we have this conditioning it's very deep. It's very, very deep, and so it does take a lot of work to kind of let go of that. So noticing the timing of when this kind of stuff happens is also important as well, and that's why it's important to pay attention to the seasonal cycles, seasonal changes, because every seasonal change we're going to experience some shift within us, and so we can either be in alignment with that and work with it, or we can not even be aware of it and experience the consequences. And that's the same as every aspect of this natural creation. You either work with what's happening. The truth is, it doesn't need your belief. It doesn't need your approval. It just is regardless. You either work with it or you suffer because of it. That's the choice within this. So the more that we can recognize these seasonal changes, we can kind of prepare for that. And for those who are still living in colder climates, if you are and I'd suggest maybe not living in colder climates. That's one solution. That's one
Yeah,
easy that becomes logical after a
that was
certain point.
mine. I was like, get out.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
th- but but even as such, I still wouldn't go for eating an animal if I
yeah,
got into that space. I'd still go for the carrots and the root vegetables and things of that nature if that's what I had available to me. If I didn't have access to fruit around me, like, because it's still uh, the suffering aspect of
yeah,
just myself and others is still it's still priority to me, because I know that there is no separation between me and that creature that's being harvested. That's part of me. So why would I harm myself to feed myself? That doesn't make any sense. But it only makes sense if you do believe that there is a separation. And so this is where that comes into play. But that's why karma exists, so that we learn from this harm. We learn to not harm ourselves anymore. But people are stubborn.
yeah, and yeah, defaults and cultural conditioning, how it's so strong in a lot of families or even in the same society. Um, I was gonna ask about, so you, how long you been vegan?
Yeah, that was the same time when I quit cold turkey everything. So I was eating
Wow.
meat up until, let's see, what was that? 20, yeah, at the end of 2020, I was still eating meat.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So when I quit meat, I quit alcohol, I quit all animal products, I quit all cooked foods and went straight into a
stimulants.
juice fast. Yeah, everything.
Was you a coffee drinker? You,
No, I never was much into coffee.
yeah.
But I quit everything. I stopped it
Wow.
all and went completely raw. And like I said, that might not be the best approach unless you're really willing to go into that level, those deep levels of
Yeah.
detox, and even have some periods of time where you're really, really skinny and weak.
Mm.
But it's essential to kind of realize that we built this body on poison. So our body's a miracle. It's able to handle,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it's amazing. There are people who are living on Diet Cokes and hamburgers from McDonald's, like, and they're sustaining that, and not thriving. They're not
No.
thriving, but they are
Yeah.
living and breathing.
Existing.
Maybe not fully conscious, but they're semi-conscious. You can have a conversation with them, and they're alive. That is, if that's not a testament to how miraculous this body is, I don't know what is. So our body is able to handle a wide array of things that we throw at it. But our goal is to just find the optimum route, to not be bogging it down with all this shit. So we've built it on toxins. So that's the sort of uncomfortable aspect that people aren't often wanting to go through, is this breakdown period where you do have to shed that whole system. You have to start from scratch, and you have to shed all of that weight, all of that baggage, all of that toxicity. And there are different approaches that you can take to that process, but the process is the same, and it's the same spiritually as well. When you're holding on to emotional weight, you're holding on to traumas, you're holding on to stories, you're holding on to victim mindsets, you're not going to be able to move forward. You have to shed all of that weight in order to truly elevate. So everything works together,
Mm-hmm.
and they play into each other as well. So that's why I mentioned the holistic aspect, because if that's not considered when going into the food space, you're not going to have a successful time at some point or another, because you'll hit those emotional blockages. And until those are addressed, sometimes starting with the food is what brings out the emotional blockages, and you can address it that way. Sometimes you have to address an emotional blockage before you can even address the food. So it depends from person to person. um, but that's an important part of realizing what this journey is about.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you hit so many great nuggets there. In regards to spirituality, then, what seeing as though you've touched, well, you spoke about it, is the what's your take on, can you be spiritual and eat animals?
Well, everyone's a spirit, everyone's a soul. So there's no not being spiritual. You can't be unspiritual, but there's varying levels of frequencies where we are the accumulation of everything that we intake. And that includes the thoughts that we take, the people that we're around, the food that we eat, the water that we drink, our environment. Every factor plays into our baseline frequency, what we're emitting as we're walking each and every day. So if you're going to be eating these animals who have been tortured, force bred, often raped, they are in the most heinous, awful conditions you could possibly imagine. If you're eating conventional meat, and even if you're going to the sort of grass raised,
Mm-hmm.
humane, like, they're still murdered. I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
If there's no animal that's like, here, slit my throat and eat my flesh, like, that doesn't happen. Even people are like, well, I'm a pescatarian, and while that might be a less harmful thing to consume on your body than other forms of meat, that fish is still not wanting you to catch it. It's still not wanting you to kill it. It's still not wanting to die. So this is moving into that space where you're taking from another, and you do. So if that animal has been tortured, and you're eating the flesh of that creature, or even if it's just been murdered, the adrenaline that pumps through to toxify that body, you're going to be consuming that adrenaline,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a drug. It's like a drug, and we get high off of it. So that's why we like it. That's why we enjoy it. We get high off of it.
Yeah.
But that adrenaline, that especially in that space, it's a very harmful drug in the long term. It's not good for us to consume, and it will start to break us down. So your answer around, can you be spiritual if you eat meat? Yes. I mean, there are many factors to spirituality, but it's not going to be that same level. You're going to have that amount of just bogging down, consistently holding you at a certain space. And until you let go of that one, you won't go any higher. You'll stay, you might address other areas in your life, and you might continue to elevate to a certain point. But as that's a really heavy weight to be carrying with you, to be consuming those karmic repercussions, to be consuming these things that aren't designed for us. You have to invite parasites into your body in order to break these things down, because our body doesn't even know what to do with it. So
Yeah.
we have to invite all these different fungus and parasites and things just to deal with them. And these parasites, these fungus, these yeast, all of them, it doesn't it that has a lower frequency as well, because it's parasitical in nature. The parasite is the lowest frequency form. It's something that can't sustain on its own, so it always has to find a host, and it always has to harvest. It's always in a lack-based mentality. A parasite naturally is in a lack-based mentality. It's always afraid of running out. It's always afraid for its life. So when these tap into you, then you're experiencing these same frequencies that these parasites are feeling, and then they latch into your nervous system, and then they control you, they steer you. You are their slave now.
Yeah.
So there's no room to move past that. You can work on certain things to a certain point, but at a certain level, you have to let that go if you want to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned about the frequency and the vibration of foods. And you said about that, that was a great explanation on the parasites. Yeah, even that, explaining it in even more deeper, that the heavier foods are going to be lower in frequency. Not everyone's aware of, we're all energy, we're vibrational beings, and anything that we consume is what we're going to take on. And if we look at the vibrational and the frequency of each, and we're looking at music, I'm really into like the frequencies of music, how now we're being manipulated in the mainstream, and that opened up. I was always aware of the manipulation, but not to the level of the sound frequency. Really into the healing balls.
to
I'm
to
just
the point
fascinated.
Well, to the point that most electronic devices are tuned to these bombarding frequencies that we can't even hear for the most part. So, I mean, even if your TV is turned off, a lot of them are still emitting a frequency that's bombarding you constantly.
Yeah.
So, people who know that we are frequency based beings, we're energetic beings, as you said, they know that that's how you control it. So that was the whole agenda with ejecting us with all these sort of metal particles and spraying us with all these metal particles, because then we turn into an antenna, and then we're like a radio station, and they can just tune us to whatever frequency and whatever sort of emotion, whatever sort of disease or whatever they wanted to. That
Yeah.
was the trajectory that we were headed to.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we're not anymore, but that's something we very much have to be aware of and be conscious of, so that we don't fall back into those kind of tricks and traps.
Yeah, I feel there is a level of, yeah, for those that have had the injection, and yeah, there's gonna be what actually on that, I wasn't gonna ask about this, but because this is so foreign what they've put into our bodies, but there's a lot of people that's come to me, they've had the injection, they're concerned, what can they do health wise, and they're really panicking. I don't have I do believe the power of the mind, and we're working on a lot of the mindset tools, and also there's the detoxification. Because there's got to be those that are asking you as well. Now they're panicking. They've realized by the Fed injection, they're like, okay, this is something's not right. Like now it's too late. They feel it is too late. What do you advise
Well,
them?
yeah, well, at first step is just don't fear. The fear is the tool of the enemy. It's the tool of is it that, if you're talking about vibration and frequency, that's going to keep you in that low form, and if you look at it from a chakra perspective, it's really important to view our journey from this chakra perspective, this 7-step process, because fear is that root Muladhara chakra. That is that base level, and that's
Yeah.
that's where society likes to keep us, in this fear state. And so if we willingly keep ourselves in this fear state as well, then we're just doing the same thing. We're programming ourselves to stay in that fear state. So first step is to let go of the fear and trust that everything's happening for your highest good. Even if you made a decision like that, the fact that you're coming to a realization that that was wrong, you're moving out of that state. You're going in the right direction, and God's not going to make it to where it's hopeless and futile. God doesn't work in this space to where fears just dictate and govern everything. If we let them, they do. He gives us free will. There's not really like we get the free choice to make that decision on how we frame our reality. Is this going to be a love and faith-based reality, or is this going to be a fear and despair-based reality? We get to choose. There these two simultaneously parallel universes existing right beside each other, and you'll see somebody wearing a mask. They're in that fear-based state. They're living in that reality. That's not where I live. I can see them over there in that space. I can see them. I can wave to them and interact with them, but I don't live in that space. So I would just caution anyone who gets into that state of despair is first just breathe. Just take some breathe and realize that it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. You're going to be okay, because God gave us everything everything we needed to address anything that we could possibly imagine. Any ailment, no tool that man creates is even remotely possible to stopping the natural abilities of our body to heal. It can address anything. So it doesn't matter how dangerous any sort of injection or poison that we take, it can be healed. Now, the length, the severity of that damage does require more diligence to address certain things. I don't know what's all in those things. I don't know how much it needs to be addressed. I don't know the effects that it can have, but I do know that the body can heal anything, and I know this absolutely. And if, in order to truly start that healing process, you need to know that absolutely as well. That's where that faith comes in. If you don't have faith in this process, if you have those doubts, if those fears are always creeping in, if you think it's not going to be enough, then it won't be. You will create that reality. So start with that space of knowing that you can address that. You can get past that. You can move past these kinds of things, but it is going to take work. To me, that's a very serious infraction on our faith in God, on our faith in ourselves. If we're giving our power away to someone to inject us with something, even if it's just a saline solution and it has nothing in it, energetically, that's still a very serious thing that we've done. And so we're going to have to do some rebalancing to get back to that space. It's not that it's wrong. It's not that we did anything irredeemable, but we just have to do some work. We have to realize what we did and be honest with ourselves. So my recommendation with anybody, regardless of what the situation is, depending on how severe the issue is, you need to look at going into severely fasting, going into a long water fast. If you really want to address and heal your issues, go on all fruit for a period of time and then go on a long water fast. That's the way, hands down, that you can address anything, no matter what. You can be on death's door, and if you hit it diligently enough, you can address anything. So that would be the same approach I'd give to anyone fearful of that as well. But oftentimes when you tell people they're going to have to do a lot of work to address something,
Oh,
then
yeah.
all of a sudden they don't want to do all that work. And all of a sudden those fears don't really matter that much anymore. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, okay, well then you go about it however you want to, but here's the solution. And it's the same solution for everything. And
Yeah.
that's the best part about it, is it's very simple. This whole thing is very simple. The truth is very simple. Everything that we have to do is very simple. It's challenging though. It's hard. It's not like it's easy, but it's very simple. It's all about reducing the amount of toxins, reducing the amount of just shit that we're consuming, reducing the other interactions of toxic behaviors, toxic thoughts, toxic relationships. All of those things contribute to that. So we need to be cutting the cords of any of those kinds of things, and then coming back to vitality, coming back to life. And we have to look nowhere else but this very space that we were born, this God-given green earth that provides everything to us freely, in abundance, all the time. The sunlight, the water, the
Yeah.
fruit, all of it is there for us in abundance. They're there to heal us, there to embrace us with open arms. So we don't have to fear anything. The only fears come from believing the hands of man, and the hands of man are there for that very reason of, so we can have that experience with fear and then come out of it again. It's there for a purpose as well, but it's there so that we come back to this realization that we had nothing to fear to begin with. It's all just a game.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things I can expand on with there. Even just the back to that simplicity. Like that's what my message is. Bring it back down to the less we consume in everything, like the better life we're gonna have. And I feel, even when I just to give an example, when I feel a little bit of a cold coming on or something, or a sniffle. I've not been sick for a long, long time. But when I do, I fast. I have just water for 24 hours and sometimes 48 hours if I feel is just needs a little bit longer. And the healing in that, I never get sick. So there's so much in having less, and fasting is so powerful. And it's empowering. And back to even just when people are in fear, it's the fact that our body is so resilient. Like we're seeing, I had a gorgeous friend that sadly passed away not a few weeks ago through alcohol, 30 odd years drinking alcohol. I'm like, he abused his body, 1 liter of whiskey every day. And
I was surprised he lived that long. And it's unbelievable. And he smokes, it smoked, and it was so resilient. So I just think, don't, yeah, there's there's a lot of power in knowing that how resilient our bodies are, but also that we can turn it round. Just as, yeah, there's, like you say, it's going to be work, and everyone has different levels of work and phases. I definitely went through a lot of emotional detox, not so much as the physical, but because I've been transitioning, I would say, to detox for years, and being very conscious of what foods are affecting my body. But yeah, this it's having no fear. I think if we can start with that and reassurance, that was one big shift for me when I was sharing with my clients. I've got one who's really in so much fear because I've been sharing a few of some of your videos actually. She's like, oh my
Awesome.
God, I've had all these injections. And I'm like, it's okay because our body's so resilient. I don't, like you say, we don't know exactly what's been in these. We know a lot that could be. And some of them are, just sailing these controls, they're not gonna. Anyways, a big conversation on that, but I definitely want to delve deeper if I can on my channel, because this way you got to be cautious of what you share, because we
Yeah.
are getting censored, sadly, suppression. But that's why you have your channel, Justin, of your Telegram group.
Mhm.
And if we want to delve deeper into Justin's work on the awakening, on even raw foods and this lifestyle, but also the what's going on, all the BS that's going on in the world and what's being censored. If you want to delve deeper, I'll have all of Justin's channels in the description. Where else can they find you, Justin, on other social media platforms?
Yeah, so I've got my website now, justincarpenter.org. And I try and put everything from Telegram on there as well, because there are a lot of people who aren't on Telegram, just to make that easier to share and keep track of. Telegram can kind of be a hard space to find things, so the website just makes it easier to categorize and keep track of stuff, write notes on things. Um, and then I'm on Facebook as well. If you can find me there, Justin Carpenter is a common name apparently. So there's other ones out there. It might be hard to find me, but you're more than welcome to try there. I have all my links, I think, on my website.
Yeah,
You can find anything through that. So that's about it.
I'll put them all in the description box.
Awesome.
So moving forward with you, Justin. So you're going to Mexico soon. You're still traveling. You're in your RV.
Well, no, I
Oh,
stopped the RV traveling. This year was a sponsored travel, so I had a very generous donor sponsor everything, like food, housing, every aspect of this year. Incredibly grateful for that experience and for that opportunity to get to do that, traveling around, meeting other like-minded people and people who are ready and hungry and willing to step out into this path, which it can be a lonely path at first, and we all know that. Then when and that's by design. And I love I don't know if you watched Eli's recent videos with Genesis Sunfire, but they talk about how this food journey, it's really an initiation process. It's really something that tests your will. It tests your desire to go to the next level. And that's the same for every aspect of the truth. As the more that we embody the truth, the more that we are going to isolate ourselves from everyone else, because the status quo is always going to stay in that comfortable space. It's always going to stay in that, kind of complacent space, and they'll move along as well. But if we want to be leaders in that space, then we have to be willing to step out and say, hey, I'm here. You can attack me if you want to. You can hate on me if you want to. I'm going to keep doing this because this is the way. And I figured that out. I found out that this is the way. So it doesn't matter what anybody else says, because you're not on the path. So you don't know, you have no perspective. So doing that is, yeah, it takes a lot of courage, but doing it is very rewarding, because the rewards really are built into the work. So the more that we step onto this path, it just gets better. And that's the amazing thing about this creation. It rewards benevolence. It is a benevolent creation. It's rewards service. So as long as we are aligning ourselves with the greatest good by saying, what can I do today? To wake up with that surrender without so much conscious thought. I'm not trying to steer my life. I'm just going with the flow. I'm just going with that, within that space. then it does get better
fulfilling.
and better.
It's
Yeah,
fulfilling.
exactly.
It's a fulfilling life. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Amazing. So, and you're with your dog as well.
Yeah,
What's her
yeah,
name?
yeah. Kali.
Kylie.
Yeah,
Yeah, rescue pup. And you
yeah.
don't really share much of your travel life, do you? You've not really shared any of that anywhere.
Well, on my Instagram, back
Okay.
when I was traveling around in my van, I did post most of the camping sites that I went to. So if you want to see all the beautiful
Oh,
spaces I
great.
went to, go check out my Instagram. I think it's at Justin Carpenter 3. I think is me on Instagram. I haven't posted much too recently, but I did just get a TikTok and
Yeah, I saw.
at Justin underscore Carpenter, and um, I posted a video there, so I posted that on Instagram as well, and so I might reboot and start doing some shorter content, shorter videos. But you can find all my travels from within that. My travels this year are kind of all over the place, posted by other people. I haven't really done as much posting myself, but yeah,
Mhm.
I've just been kind of living in the moment, being there with it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, you're sharing a big message. That's a big job in itself, and you're very responsive to a lot, it's very giving, a lot of
Thank you.
value you're sharing. So I really appreciate that you're creating this space for us all. And like you say, it can be lonely at times, and it's nice to see others that are in that on the same alignment, same
Yeah,
frequency. It's
that's
amazing.
the cool part. That's the cool part about this journey is because the straight and narrow is few and far traveled, that the further you go along it, you start to recognize other people because it's like, hey, you did a lot of work to get here. Oh, cool. And there's not many of us, but we can be allies because we're on the same page. We're on the same team. So it's cool to connect and yeah, I'm looking forward to more interactions in the future.
Yeah, it's very comforting. So I really, appreciate it. Thank you so much, Justin. So
Yeah.
if you want to check out all of his socials, they're all in the description box, and I'll put his website there as well. Thank you, Justin. And
Yeah.
I'll
Thank you,
I'll
Tony.
end with the be, feel, and stay Rawlicious. Do you want to say it actually? Are
Be,
you
feel,
ready?
and stay rawlicious. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it together after three.
All right.
1, 2, 3. Be,
Be,
feel,
feel,
and
and
stay
stay
Rawlicious.
rawlicious.
And you can do a little kiss. Fantastic.
I
Thank you
love it.
so much.
All right, Tony. Appreciate it.